The crystal glasses clinked around our private dining room as Dad stood up, commanding everyone's attention with just his presence. He always had that effect on people, a room silencer. I should have known something was wrong when he insisted on hosting this special announcement dinner at Vincenzo's instead of our own restaurant. Dad straightened his tie and smiled, the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. "I've come to a decision about the future of Romano's," he announced, looking between me and my twin brother Matt. The room fell silent, everyone's eyes darting between us. 18 years I'd worked at our family restaurant, creating signature dishes, modernizing operations, pushing us to the forefront of Oakwood's dining scene. While Matt had spent the last decade bouncing between business ventures in Boston, barely calling home except when he needed money. Dad reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart skipped. The box contained the vintage brass keys to Romano's front door, a tradition Grandma Rosa started when she and Grandpa first opened in 1981. "Matt will take over as owner and CEO of Romano's, effective next month." The keys dropped into Matt's outstretched palm, and just like that, my future shattered. I felt the blood drain from my face as relatives erupted in congratulations. Matt's triumphant grin burned into my memory as he pocketed my birthright. I forced my lips into something resembling a smile while my fingernails dug crescents into my palms beneath the table. 18 years of my life, my passion, my sacrifice, gone with a single sentence. What Dad didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Grandma Rosa had left me a letter before she died. A letter about the real estate beneath Romano's, one that would change everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Emma Romano, 34 years old, and until tonight, I believed I would someday inherit the restaurant my grandparents built from nothing. Romano's isn't just a business to me. It's my identity, my heritage, the culmination of 3 generations of family recipes and sacrifices. My earliest memory is standing on a step stool beside Grandma Rosa, my little hands covered in flour as she taught me to knead dough until it feels like a baby's bottom. I couldn't have been more than 4. Matt was there too, but he quickly lost interest, wandering off to play with the delivery boys while I stayed, absorbing every technique, every secret ingredient, every whispered family story. Matt and I may be twins, but we couldn't be more different. Where I'm methodical and dedicated, Matt is charismatic and impulsive. When we were children, our differences complemented each other. As adults, they drove us apart. After the announcement. Dinner. I somehow made it through dessert without breaking down. I raised my tiramisu-smeared fork in a toast to Matt, congratulating him with words that tasted like ash in my mouth. My mother squeezed my knee under the table, her silent acknowledgement that this was wrong, but she said nothing. She never did when Dad made his proclamations. "Emma has done a wonderful job as head chef," Dad added, as if throwing me a bone. "And of course, she'll continue in that role." 18 years reduced to head chef, as if I hadn't been the one managing inventory, scheduling staff, handling payroll, and developing the seasonal menus that earned us regional acclaim. As if I hadn't been the one who held Grandma Rosa's hand when she died 3 months ago, promising to protect her legacy. Uncle Tony, half drunk on Chianti, was the only one who spoke up. "But Emma's been running the place for years. Shouldn't she—" "My decision is final," Dad interrupted, his tone leaving no room for discussion. "Matt has an MBA. He understands business in ways Emma doesn't." I excused myself early, claiming exhaustion. In reality, I couldn't bear to watch Matt accept congratulations for inheriting something he'd never earned. In my car, safely hidden from prying eyes, I finally let the tears fall, hot and angry against my cheeks. The unfairness of it burned like acid in my chest. Romano's wasn't just a restaurant. It was the heart of Oakwood, a place where generations of families celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, and first dates. The corner brick building with its red and white striped awning had survived economic downturns, changing food, trends, and fierce competition because of my family's dedication. Because of my dedication. I drove past Romano's on my way home, its windows dark except for the small light we always kept burning in the kitchen, a tradition Grandma started, to guide the hungry home. Tomorrow, I would walk through those doors as I had nearly every day of my adult life. But everything would be different. Matt would be my boss. The thought made me physically ill. At home, I kicked off my heels and poured a generous glass of wine. My small bungalow was just 3 blocks from the restaurant, close enough to run over if the alarm ever triggered, which had happened more than once. The walls were lined with cookbooks and family photos, many featuring Grandma Rosa and me in the restaurant kitchen, flour dusting our cheeks, wide smiles showing identical dimples. I grabbed the oldest photo album and flipped to my favorite picture. Grandma Rosa at the grand opening of Romano's, her arms spread wide in welcome, a young version of my father standing proudly beside her. They had the same strength in their eyes, the same determination. What had changed in him? When had he decided that his son deserved everything, regardless of merit, while his daughter deserved scraps? As I turned the page, something slipped out. A small envelope, yellowed with age, with my name written in Grandma's distinctive handwriting. I froze, my breath catching. This wasn't the letter she'd left me. That one was safely stored in my desk drawer, still sealed with her wax. Stamp as she'd instructed, open only when the restaurant's future seems uncertain. Well, if tonight didn't qualify as uncertain, nothing did. I carefully broke the seal and unfolded the letter, my hands trembling slightly. Grandma's elegant script filled the page. My dearest Emma. If you're reading this, then Joseph has made the mistake I feared he might. Your father is a good man in many ways, but he has always been blinded by tradition and old-world thinking. He believes a son should inherit the family business, regardless of passion or commitment. What Joseph doesn't understand, what he has never understood, is that Romano's is more than a restaurant. It is our heart, our soul, and it belongs to those who truly love it. Years ago, when your grandfather and I first opened our doors, we purchased not just our building, but the land beneath and beside it. Over time, we acquired the adjacent properties through separate legal entities that only I controlled. Your father believes he inherited everything, but the truth is more complicated. Visit Eleanor Barnes at 1472 Maple Avenue. Show her this letter. She has protected our family's interests for 40 years, and she holds documents that will ensure Romano's legacy remains in the right hands. Remember, piccola mia, patience is the secret ingredient to every recipe worth savoring. With all my love, Nonna Rosa. I read the letter 3 times, my mind racing. What did this mean? What documents had Grandma left with this Eleanor Barnes? The name sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. I drained my wine glass and checked the time, past midnight. Too late to make any calls, but not too late to search online. A quick search revealed that Eleanor Barnes was a real estate attorney with an office downtown. Her website described her as specializing in complex property transactions and generational wealth transfers. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying Dad's announcement, Matt's smug smile, the feel of those brass keys that should have been mine. By dawn, my sadness had hardened into something else: determination. Grandma Rosa had left me a path forward, and I intended to follow it. Morning arrived with a text from Matt. Meeting at Romano's, 8 a.m., bringing in a consultant to evaluate operations. Not even owner for 24 hours, and he was already talking about consultants. I showered quickly, dressed in my chef whites out of habit, then changed into a simple black dress and blazer instead. Today wouldn't be about cooking, it would be about survival. Romano's looked the same as it always did in the early morning light. The red brick facade warm and inviting, window boxes overflowing with geraniums I'd planted myself, the hand-painted sign casting a gentle shadow on the sidewalk. But everything felt different as I approached the door, fishing out my keys. Not the ceremonial brass ones, but the everyday set I'd carried for years. Inside, the dining room was still dark, chairs upturned on tables exactly as we'd left them last night. The familiar sense of garlic, basil, and aged wood wrapped around me like a hug. This place was in my blood. How could Dad not see that? Voices echoed from the kitchen. Matt's distinctive laugh, followed by Dad's deeper tone and a woman's voice I didn't recognize. I straightened my shoulders and pushed through the swinging doors. Matt sat perched on my prep station, my sacred space, while Dad and a sleek blonde woman in a charcoal suit hovered over a laptop displaying spreadsheets. "Ah, Emma." Matt's voice was falsely bright. "Meet Stephanie Wells from Valley Restaurant Group. She's helping us evaluate Romano's market position and growth potential." The blonde offered a manicured hand. "Pleasure. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Matt speaks highly of your culinary skills." My culinary skills. Not my business acumen, not my dedication to the restaurant, not my years of growing our profits while maintaining quality. Just my ability to cook, as if I were merely a kitchen employee, rather than the person who'd been running this entire operation. "Valley Restaurant Group," I repeated, ignoring her outstretched hand. "The same company that's been converting family-owned restaurants into generic Italian chain locations?" Stephanie's smile tightened. "We prefer to call it scaling authentic experiences." "Of course you do." I turned to Dad. "Can I speak with you privately?" Dad sighed, that familiar expression of disappointment crossing his face. "Emma, this is happening. Matt has exciting plans for Romano's future. You need to support your brother." "Support my brother?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "The way everyone has supported me for 18 years while I kept this place profitable? The way you supported me when I turned down the executive chef position at Bellissimo in Chicago to stay here? The way I supported this family when we nearly lost everything in 2008? Matt slid off the counter, straightening his designer tie. "That's ancient history, Em. The restaurant industry is changing. We need to adapt or die." "By becoming another soulless chain restaurant?" "By maximizing our potential," he corrected, his tone condescending. "Valley Restaurant Group has expressed interest in franchising the Romano's concept. We could have locations throughout the Midwest." I felt physically ill at the thought. Romano's wasn't a concept. It was Grandma Rose's Sunday gravy simmering. For hours. It was Grandpa Joe greeting every customer by name. It was the secret garden of herbs I cultivated on the roof, the wine cellar I'd carefully curated over years, the community cooking classes I taught every month. "This is wrong," I said quietly, looking directly at Dad. "And you know it." Dad couldn't hold my gaze. "The decision is made, Emma. Either work with your brother or..." He left the alternative unspoken. "Or leave." After 18 years, I was being told to fall in line or get out. I took a deep breath, thinking of Grandma's letter. Patience is the secret ingredient. "Fine," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "When do we start this evaluation?" Matt seemed surprised by my capitulation, but quickly recovered. "Stephanie will be observing operations for the next week. Just do what you normally do." What I normally did was run the entire restaurant, but I nodded anyway. "I'll be in the office catching up on paperwork. We have a full reservation book tonight." The office, my office, had already been transformed. Matt's laptop sat on the desk, surrounded by corporate-looking folders with Valley Restaurant Group's logo. My desk plants had been pushed to the corner, and the family photos I kept on the wall had been taken down, stacked carelessly on the filing cabinet. I closed the door and leaned against it, fighting back tears of frustration. Then I remembered Grandma's letter. Eleanor Barnes. I needed to see her today, before Matt dismantled everything I loved about Romano's. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number from the website I'd found last night. Barnes Legal Associates, a receptionist answered. I need to speak with Eleanor Barnes. It's regarding Rosa Romano. There was a pause. May I ask who's calling? Emma Romano, her granddaughter. Another pause. Please hold. Seconds later, a warm, slightly raspy voice came on the line. Emma, is that really you? Yes, I answered, surprised by the familiarity in her tone. I'm Rosa Romano's granddaughter. Of course you are. I'd recognize a Romano woman anywhere. You sound just like her. The lawyer's voice softened. I've been waiting for your call. How soon can you come in? You've been waiting for my call? I echoed, confused. Rosa said you'd contact me when the time was right. From the urgency in your voice, I'm guessing that time is now. My heart raced. I can be there in 30 minutes. Perfect. And, Emma, bring the letter she left you. I hung up, mind reeling. Eleanor Barnes had been expecting me. Grandma Rosa had planned for this moment, perhaps years ago. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, nearly colliding with Matt as he entered. Where are you going? We have prep to discuss. I forced a smile. Supply issue with our produce vendor. Better to handle it in person. I'll be back before lunch service. Matt frowned but stepped aside. Fine, but we need to review these menu modifications when you return. Stephanie thinks our offerings are too complex for scaling. Of course, she did. Heaven forbid customers receive food that required actual culinary skill to prepare. Looking forward to it, I lied, slipping past him. The drive to Eleanor's office took exactly 18 minutes, the same number of years I'd dedicated to Romano's. The symmetry wasn't lost on me as I parked in front of a stately colonial building with a discreet brass plaque. Barnes Legal Associates, Esther 1975. Inside, the reception area exuded old-world professionalism, leather chairs, oil paintings, and not a digital device in sight. A silver-haired woman looked up from an actual paper appointment book. You must be Emma, she said warmly. Eleanor's waiting for you. Last door on the right. I followed her directions down a hallway lined with black and white photographs of Oakwood's historic buildings. The last photo before Eleanor's door stopped me in my tracks. It was Romano's on opening day, 1981. Grandma Rosa stood proudly in front, scissors poised to cut the ribbon, her smile radiant. Eleanor's door opened before I could knock. The woman who greeted me was tall and elegant, her gray hair cut in a stylish bob, vibrant blue eyes sharp behind modern glasses. She had to be in her 70s, but carried herself with the energy of someone decades younger. Emma Romano, she said, studying me intently. You have Rosa's eyes. She gestured me inside, closing the door behind us. And from what I hear, her fire as well. Her office was a fascinating blend of old and new, antique desk and bookcases alongside state-of-the-art computer equipment. One entire wall was dedicated to maps of Oakwood, showing how the city had developed over decades. Eleanor sat behind her desk, folding her hands. So, Joseph has given the restaurant to Matthew. It wasn't a question. I nodded anyway, sinking into the chair opposite her. Last night, with no warning. Rosa warned me this might happen. She saw how Joseph favored your brother, despite your dedication. Eleanor's eyes softened. It broke her heart to think he might dismiss you after everything you've done. I swallowed hard. Grandma left me a letter. She told me to come to you. I removed the envelope from my purse, carefully placing it on her desk. Eleanor didn't open it. Instead, She rose and walked to a painting on the wall, a landscape of Oakwood's town square from what looked like the 1950s. She swung the painting aside, revealing a small safe. After entering a combination, she removed a thick, manila envelope. Rosa established a trust 20 years ago, she explained, returning to her desk. She was a remarkable woman, Emma. Most people saw only the grandmother, the chef, the restaurant owner. Few recognized the shrewd businesswoman beneath those aprons. Eleanor opened the envelope, spreading documents across the desk. When your grandparents opened Romano's, that part of Oakwood was considered undesirable. Property values were low. Over the years, as their restaurant succeeded, they quietly purchased adjoining properties. The vacant lot behind the restaurant, the small warehouse next door, even the alleyway connecting them. My confusion must have shown on my face. Your father believes he inherited the restaurant building when your grandfather died, Eleanor continued. That's partially true. Joseph inherited the business itself, the name, the recipes, the goodwill, the equipment. But the real estate, she tapped the documents. That was always in Rosa's name alone, through a separate holding company called RJ Properties. I leaned forward, scanning the papers. Property deeds, tax records, surveys, all showing substantial real estate holdings in downtown Oakwood. I don't understand, I admitted. Dad always said he owned the building. He thought he did. Rosa never corrected him. She wanted to see what he would do with the business, whom he would ultimately choose to lead it. Eleanor slid a more recent document toward me. 3 months before she died, when her cancer returned, Rosa updated her estate plan. The business succession was Joseph's decision, but the real estate, she smiled, that she left to you, through this trust. I stared at the document, my name clearly listed as the beneficiary of RJ Properties. I own the building? Not just the building. You own nearly a quarter block of prime downtown real estate. Eleanor pulled up a map on her computer, highlighting several parcels. This is all yours, effective on your 35th birthday. Next month. The trust stipulates that ownership transfers to you then. My mind raced. So even though Matt owns Romano's restaurant, he's essentially your tenant, Eleanor finished. Or he will be once the trust activates. The implications slowly dawned on me. Matt might control the restaurant business, but I would control the physical location, the historic building that was as much a part of Romano's identity as the food itself. There's more, Eleanor said, clicking through files on her computer. The city council approved a downtown revitalization plan last year. They're offering significant tax incentives for mixed-use development in exactly this area. She turned the screen toward me, showing architectural renderings of an updated downtown Oakwood. Developers have been circling these properties for months. Rosa received multiple offers before her death, including one for nearly $8 million for the combined parcels. $8 million. The number made my head spin. But Grandma didn't sell, I said slowly. No. She believed there was more value in waiting, and in controlling the property's destiny. Eleanor leaned back. Rosa wanted you to have options. Emma. She knew Joseph might make the wrong choice. She made sure you would have the power to protect her legacy, whatever form that might take. I sat in stunned silence, processing everything. Matt might own Romano's, but without the building, without the location that 3 generations of customers associated with our family restaurant, what did he really have? What happens now? I finally asked. Eleanor checked her watch. Now, you go back to work. You smile. You cook. You pretend nothing has changed. Her eyes twinkled with a hint of mischief. And you wait exactly 33 days until your 35th birthday, when you legally control some of the most valuable real estate in Oakwood. And then? Then, my dear, you decide what Romano's legacy really means. She gathered the documents returning them to the envelope. I'll keep these safe until your birthday. In the meantime, say nothing to anyone. Not your father. Certainly not your brother. Not even your mother. Rosa was insistent about that. I nodded, still overwhelmed but feeling something I hadn't felt since Dad's announcement: hope. As I stood to leave, Eleanor handed me a small key. For a safe deposit box at Oakwood Community Bank. Rosa left something else for you there. She said you'd know when the time was right to open it. I clutched the key, thinking of Grandma's words. Patience is the secret ingredient to every recipe worth savoring. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Eleanor walked me to the door, then paused. Your grandmother was one of my dearest friends for 40 years, Emma. She believed in you completely. She squeezed my hand. So do I. I walked back to my car feeling like I was floating, my mind racing with possibilities. 33 days. I needed to survive 33 days of Matt's leadership, his consultants, his franchise plans. I could do that. For Grandma Rosa, for Romano's true legacy, I could do anything. As I drove back to the restaurant, my restaurant, in ways Matt couldn't begin to imagine, I felt Grandma's presence beside me, almost hearing her whisper, La pazienza è amara, ma il suo frutto è dolce. Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. What I normally did was run the entire operation, but I bit my tongue. This wasn't the time to fight. Not yet. I'll just go prep for lunch service then, I said, moving toward the walk-in refrigerator. I needed a moment alone to collect my thoughts. Inside the chilled space, surrounded by the fresh produce I'd personally selected from the farmer's market yesterday, I leaned against the metal shelving and took several deep breaths. The cold air cleared my head. I needed to play along, to maintain the illusion of acceptance while I figured out exactly what Grandma Rosa had set up. When I emerged, Matt and Stephanie had moved to the dining room, and I could hear them discussing aesthetic updates and brand consistency. Dad had disappeared, probably heading to his golf game now that he'd handed over his responsibilities to his son. The kitchen staff began arriving for the day shift. Carlos, our sous chef who had worked alongside me for nearly a decade, immediately sensed something was wrong. Everything okay, chef? He asked quietly as he tied on his apron. Matt's taking over the restaurant, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Dad made the announcement last night. Carlos frowned. But you run this place. Not anymore, apparently. I handed him the prep list for the day. Just follow my lead for now, okay? Things are going to get complicated. Whatever you need, chef. His loyalty warmed me. I wondered how many of the staff would stay once Matt started implementing his improvements. The morning passed in a blur of preparation. I lost myself in the familiar rhythms, reducing stock, trimming vegetables, kneading pasta dough, while keeping one eye on Matt and Stephanie as they toured the restaurant. I caught snippets of their conversation. Outdated decor, menu, simplification, brand potential. By noon, the first lunch customers arrived. Romano's had been a popular lunch spot for decades, drawing a mix of business people, retirees, and families. I knew most of our regulars by name, their orders by heart. "Emma!" called Mrs. Abernathy, a widow who had been coming for Tuesday lunch since Grandma Rosa's time. "Those new ravioli last week were divine. Do you have them again?" I smiled, momentarily forgetting my troubles. "Made fresh this morning, Mrs. A. Mushroom and Fontina with that truffle oil you love." Matt materialized beside me, extending his hand to Mrs. Abernathy. "I don't believe we've met. Matt Romano, the new owner." Mrs. Abernathy looked confused. "New owner? But I thought—" She glanced at me. "My brother," I explained, keeping my tone light. "Dad's passing the reins to the next generation." "Both of you?" she asked hopefully. Matt laughed. "Emma will still be in the kitchen, of course. She's an excellent chef, but I'll be handling the business side now." Mrs. Abernathy's eyes narrowed slightly. She'd known me since I was a child. I see. Well, Emma, I'll have those ravioli. And perhaps you could join me for a moment when you have time. I nodded, grateful for the ally. Of course. Throughout lunch service, similar scenes played out as regulars expressed surprise at Matt's sudden appearance as owner. By 2 o'clock, when the rush ended, my emotional exhaustion was complete. I slipped into the dining room and took a seat at Mrs. Abernathy's table. She patted my hand sympathetically. "Your grandmother would not approve," she said without preamble. She and Grandma Rosa had been close friends for decades. "No, she wouldn't," I agreed. "Rosa always said you were the heart of this place." Mrs. Abernathy studied me. "She also said you were smarter than all the men in your family combined." That made me smile. It sounded exactly like something Grandma would say. "Did she ever mention someone named Eleanor Barnes to you?" I asked impulsively. Mrs. Abernathy's eyebrows shot up. "Eleanor? Why, yes. They were in the business association together years ago. Quite the powerhouse, Eleanor. She helped Rosa with some property matters, if I recall correctly." She leaned forward. "Why do you ask?" "Just something." "That came up," I said vaguely. "I need to speak with her." "You do that." Mrs. Abernathy gathered her purse. "And don't worry too much about your brother. Men like him make grand plans but lack the patience to see them through." She winked. "Rosa taught you better." After she left, I returned to the kitchen to help with dinner prep. The afternoon passed without incident, though I noticed Matt had installed himself in my office, making calls and typing furiously on his laptop. Stephanie had departed, promising to return with preliminary recommendations the next day. By 7, dinner service was in full swing. Romano's had always been known for consistent excellence, and tonight was no exception. I lost myself in the familiar dance of the kitchen, calling orders, expediting plates, ensuring every dish that left my domain was perfect. This was my realm, where I reigned supreme, regardless of who officially owned the restaurant. Around 8, I felt a shift in the kitchen's energy. Carlos nudged me, nodding toward the pass-through window. Matt stood there with 2 men in expensive suits. "Emma," he called, "come meet Stanley Griffith and Peter Zhao from Valley Restaurant Group. They'll be dining with us tonight." I wiped my hands on my apron and approached warily. These must be the franchise executives, the ones looking to turn Romano's into a chain. "Gentlemen," I nodded coolly. "Your brother tells us you're the culinary genius behind Romano's success," said Griffith, a silver-haired man with calculating eyes. "We're impressed with what we've seen in the financials." "Cooking is only part of it," I replied. "Romano's is about family, tradition, community. Things that don't show up on a balance sheet." Zhao smiled thinly. "Sentiment has its place, but scalable systems are what build restaurant empires. We believe Romano's has untapped potential." "We'll take my grandmother's corner table," Maddie interjected, steering them toward the dining room. "Emma, have the kitchen prepare something special, would you?" It wasn't a request. I returned to my station, anger simmering. "Carlos, special tasting menu for table 9. Everything perfect." "The vultures?" he asked quietly. "The very same." I poured my frustration into creating a magnificent meal, all Grandma Rosa's classics executed flawlessly. Let them taste what they wanted to standardize, to reduce to frozen portions and microwave instructions. Let them understand what they would destroy. As I personally delivered the tiramisu, Grandma's secret recipe with the coffee-soaked ladyfingers and mascarpone that had won awards, Griffith was mid-sentence, thinking 6 locations to start, then regional expansion if the metrics supported. "This looks wonderful," Zhao said as I placed the dessert before him. "Your brother mentioned you've kept the recipes very traditional." "Some things don't need improvement," I replied, my smile not reaching my eyes. Matt shot me a warning look. Emma has been resistant to some updates, but we're working on modernizing several aspects of the operation. Change can be difficult, Griffith said, his tone patronizing, but necessary for growth. I bit back a sharp retort, remembering Grandma's advice about patience. Enjoy your dessert, gentlemen. I retreated to the kitchen, my mind racing. I needed to see what was in that safe deposit box. I needed to understand exactly what Grandma had arranged with Eleanor Barnes. After closing, when the last customers had departed and the staff had cleaned the kitchen to my exacting standards, Matt summoned me to the office. My office, though his belongings were rapidly colonizing the space. They loved it, he said, leaning back in my chair. Valley is prepared to make an offer for franchise rights. 7 figures, Emma. Can you imagine? I can imagine Romano's name on strip malls across the Midwest, serving frozen pasta reheated by minimum wage workers who've never met a Romano, I replied flatly. Is that really what you want? Matt sighed. What I want is to maximize the value of this business. Dad built something good, but it's stagnant, limited to one location, dependent entirely on you and a handful of loyal customers. Dad didn't build this, I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts. Grandma and Grandpa built it. You and I grew up here. This isn't just a business, Matt. It's our heritage. Heritage doesn't pay for retirement, he countered. Dad deserves to enjoy his golden years without worrying about this place. The franchise deal would set him up for life. Set all of us up. By selling Grandma's legacy to corporate suits? Matt's expression hardened. The deal is happening, Emma. You can either support it and stay on as executive chef for the flagship location, or you can walk away. Your choice. I stared at my twin, trying to reconcile this stranger with the boy who once helped me steal cookies from Grandma's cooling racks. When had money become more important than memory? When had legacy become a commodity to be sold rather than preserved? I need time to think, I said finally. Matt nodded. Take the weekend. We're meeting with Valley's legal team on Monday to discuss terms. He gathered his things, preparing to leave. This is a good thing, Em. You'll see. After he left, I sat alone in the dimly lit restaurant, surrounded by the ghosts of countless family dinners, celebrations, and milestones that had occurred within these walls. I could almost hear Grandma Rosa humming as she rolled pasta dough. Could almost see Grandpa Joe greeting customers at the door. This place was sacred, and I would not let it be desecrated. The next morning, I arrived at Oakwood Community Bank. As soon as it opened, the key Eleanor had given me burned in my pocket as I approached the teller. I need access to a safe deposit box, I explained, showing my ID. I believe it was opened by Rosa Romano. The teller checked her computer. Yes, box 247. Are you authorized on the account? I produced the key. I believe so. After verifying my identity, she led me to the vault and located the box. I'll give you some privacy, she said, leaving me alone in the small viewing room. I inserted the key with trembling fingers. The lock turned smoothly, and I lifted the lid. Inside was a single USB drive and another envelope with my name on it. I opened the envelope first. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, you've spoken with Eleanor and understand the situation with the properties. What you may not yet comprehend is why I arranged things this way. Your grandfather and I built Romano's as more than a restaurant. We created a home for our family, a cornerstone for our community. When Joseph began working with us, I saw his potential, but also his limitations. He valued tradition, but often confused it with stagnation. He respected history, but sometimes failed to see the future. I recognized the same pattern forming with Matthew. He sees Romano's as an asset, not a living legacy. But you, my Emma, you understand what we built. You've honored our past while embracing change when needed. On this drive are two things. First, all the financial records of the property holdings and their current value. Eleanor can explain the details. Second, my vision for what Romano's could become, not a chain, not a franchise, but something true to our roots while embracing the future. The properties are valuable, yes. Developers would pay millions for them, but their true worth lies in what you choose to create there. Trust your instincts, piccola mia. You are a Romano woman, and we have always known our own minds. With all my love, Nonna Rosa. I clutched the letter to my chest, tears blurring my vision. Even from beyond the grave, Grandma was guiding me, believing in me. I pocketed the USB drive and returned the empty box. There would be time to review the contents later. For now, I needed to get to Romano's for the lunch shift. When I arrived, I found Matt in heated discussion with Dad in the dining room. Their voices carried through the empty restaurant. The franchise deal makes financial sense, Dad. The numbers don't lie. I understand that, but your sister... Emma can adapt or find another kitchen. This opportunity is too good to pass, up because of sentimentality. I cleared my throat and they turned. Dad looked uncomfortable, Matt defiant. Emma, Dad began. Matt's been explaining the Valley Restaurant Group proposal. I heard, I said, keeping my voice steady. Sentimentality isn't welcome in the new Romanos, apparently. Matt rolled his eyes. Don't be dramatic. You'll still be involved. Your recipes will be the foundation of the chain. My recipes? Grandma's recipes, you mean? The ones she perfected over decades. The ones people drive across the state to experience in the restaurant she built. Those recipes will reach thousands more people through franchising, Matt argued. That's honoring her legacy. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should discuss this as a family over dinner tonight. Your mother? Mom will side with you as always, I interrupted. She always does. Emma, Dad's voice sharpened. This attitude isn't helpful. Matt is trying to grow the business. No, he's trying to sell it, I corrected. There's a difference. Matt threw up his hands. This is exactly why you weren't the right choice to take over. You're too emotional about this place. Business requires objectivity. I bit back a retort, remembering Grandma's advice about patience. I have prep to do. We open in an hour. I retreated to the kitchen, but the conversation lingered in my mind. Matt was rushing the franchise deal, pushing it through before my birthday. Did he somehow suspect what Grandma had arranged? Or was he simply eager to cash in as quickly as possible? The lunch rush provided a welcome distraction. I lost myself in the familiar rhythms of the kitchen, finding solace in the work I loved. Several regulars asked about Matt, their concern evident. News traveled fast in Oakwood. Is it true Romano's might become a chain? Asked Mr. Peterson, a retired English teacher who had lunch with us every Thursday. Nothing's decided yet, I replied, unwilling to lie but unable to confirm his fears. Well, I hope not, he said firmly. Some things shouldn't change. By mid-afternoon, when the restaurant quieted, I retreated to the small office I now shared with Matt. He was out meeting with the Valley executives again, giving me a rare moment of privacy. I plugged the USB drive into my computer, curious about Grandma's vision for Romano's future. The drive contained two folders, financials and vision. I opened the financials first, finding detailed records of property purchases, tax assessments, and development proposals for the entire block. The most recent appraisal valued the combined properties at just over $5 million. I whistled softly. No wonder developers were circling. The second folder contained architectural renderings labeled Romano's Plaza. I opened them, gasping, at what appeared on screen. Grandma had commissioned plans for a complete redevelopment of the property, not to sell it, but to transform it. The renderings showed a beautiful Italian-style piazza built around an expanded Romano's restaurant. The surrounding buildings housed specialty food shops, a cooking school, a small culinary museum celebrating Oakwood's Italian heritage, and upper-floor apartments. A central courtyard featured fountains and outdoor dining spaces. It was magnificent. A vision of Romano's not as a franchise, but as the heart of a food-centric community space. The final document in the folder was a business plan, detailing how the development could be financially sustainable while preserving Romano's authentic character. Grandma had thought of everything, right down to potential tenants for the retail, spaces and curriculums for the cooking school. I sat back, stunned. This wasn't just a contingency plan in case Dad favored Matt. This was Grandma's dream for Romano's evolution, one that honored our heritage while creating something new and vibrant. The office door opened suddenly, and I quickly closed the files, ejecting the USB drive as Matt entered. "Good news," he announced, not noticing my flustered movements. "Valley is fast-tracking the deal. They want to sign preliminary agreements on Monday." "Monday?" I echoed. "That's awfully rushed for a major business decision." Matt shrugged. "Strike while the iron's hot. Their fiscal year ends soon, and they want this on the books." He tossed a folder on the desk. "They've drafted a consulting agreement for you. 3 years as culinary director overseeing menu development for all franchise locations. Generous compensation package." I didn't touch the folder. "And if I decline?" "Why would you? It's a fantastic opportunity, Emma. Your food, your recipes available to people all over the country. Plus financial security. And Romano's itself? This building? What happens to it?" "It becomes the flagship location, of course. Same name, same basic look, just updated for broader appeal." "Broader appeal," I repeated flatly. "You mean simplified, standardized?" Matt sighed dramatically. "This resistance to change is exactly why Dad chose me to lead. The restaurant business has evolved, Emma. Solo operations like this are dinosaurs. Dinosaurs that people drive hours to visit," I countered. "Dinosaurs with loyal customers and generations of goodwill." "Goodwill doesn't pay the bills." Matt checked his watch. "Valley's sending their design team tomorrow to assess the space. Try to be cooperative, okay? This is happening whether you like it or not." After he left, I retrieved the USB drive from my pocket, staring at it thoughtfully. Grandma's vision was exactly what Romano's should become. Not a franchised shadow of itself, but an evolution that built on our history. But to realize that vision, I needed to survive until my birthday. 3 more weeks of watching Matt dismantle everything I loved, of pretending to accept his plans while secretly preparing for my own. I could do it. For Grandma Rosa. For Romano's. True legacy. I could do anything. The next day brought the promised design team, a group of sleek professionals with tablets and measuring tools who spoke of brand consistency and operational standardization. They poked around every corner of Romano's, taking photos, making notes, occasionally shaking their heads at what they deemed outdated or inefficient. "The kitchen will need a complete overhaul," said one, eyeing my beloved wood-fired oven with disdain. "Too labor-intensive for franchise operations." "The dining room has charm," said another, "but the layout isn't optimal for table turnover. We'd recommend reconfiguring for maximum seating capacity." I bit my tongue as they discussed removing the hand-painted murals of the Italian countryside that Grandma Rosa had commissioned from a local artist decades ago. They debated replacing the antique chandelier that Grandpa Joe had brought from the old country with more contemporary lighting fixtures. Matt followed them around like an eager puppy, nodding at their suggestions, clearly imagining dollar signs with each proposed change. Dad had stopped by briefly but left quickly, clearly uncomfortable with the rapid transformation of his family's restaurant. By evening, when the design team finally departed, I felt physically ill. Their vision for Romano's Italian Eatery, they'd even changed the name in their mock-ups, bore almost no resemblance to the restaurant I loved. It was generic, soulless, designed for efficiency rather than experience. "Well?" Matt asked expectantly as we stood in the now empty dining room. "Impressive, right? They really know their stuff." I looked around the space, at the worn but beautiful hardwood floors Grandpa had installed himself, at the wall of family photos chronicling 4 decades of Romano history, at the corner table where Grandma Rosa had held court for years, greeting customers and sharing stories. "This isn't Romano's," I said quietly. "What they're proposing, it's just another chain restaurant with our name slapped on it." Matt's expression hardened. "It's progress, Emma. It's business, and it's not your decision. Have you even considered alternatives? Other ways to grow without sacrificing everything? That makes this place special." "Like what? Limping along as a single location until we're eventually pushed out by competitors? Watching our profits dwindle year after year?" He shook his head. "No thanks. I prefer success." "Success isn't just measured in dollars," I said, thinking of Grandma's vision. "It's measured in impact, in community, in legacy." "Save the philosophy for your cooking classes," Matt snapped. "Valley's offering 7 figures for the franchise. Rights alone, plus ongoing royalties. That's the kind of legacy I'm interested in." I studied my twin's face, searching for some remnant of the boy who once helped me make surprise anniversary dinner for our grandparents, who had cried when Grandpa Joe died, who had shared my love for this place even if he didn't share my passion for the work. I found no trace of that boy. "What would Grandma say if she could see this?" I asked softly. Something flickered in Matt's eyes, doubt, perhaps, or guilt, but it vanished quickly. Grandma was a wonderful woman and a great cook, but she wasn't a business person. Times have changed. I almost laughed. If he only knew how shrewd a business person Grandma Rosa had actually been, how carefully she had planned, how strategically she had acquired properties while everyone underestimated her. "I have one request," I said, changing tactics. "Delay the franchise agreement until after my birthday next month. Give me that time to adjust, to prepare the staff, to say goodbye to Romano's as it is." Matt frowned. "Why wait? Valley wants to move quickly." "Because I've given 18 years to this restaurant," I replied, my voice steady. "Because despite what you and Dad think, I have earned a voice in its future. Because it's the right thing to do, and you know it." He studied me suspiciously, clearly trying to determine if I had some ulterior motive. "The deal needs to happen, Emma. I won't let you sabotage it. I'm not asking you to cancel it. I'm asking for a few weeks of respect for everything I've contributed." After a long moment, Matt nodded reluctantly. "Fine, we'll sign after your birthday. But no interference with Valley's preparations, understand? Their teams will still be coming in to plan the transition." "Understood," I agreed, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. I had won myself the time I needed. Later that night, I called Eleanor Barnes from the privacy of my home. "I found the USB drive," I told her. "I saw Grandma's vision for the property." "Magnificent, isn't it?" Eleanor sounded pleased. Rosa worked with architects for months perfecting those plans. She believed Romano's could be so much more than just a restaurant. "It's exactly what the property should become," I agreed. "But Matt's rushing to sign a franchise agreement with Valley Restaurant Group. He wants to turn Romano's into a chain." Eleanor made a disapproving noise. "That would be a travesty. But he can't sell what he doesn't own. He doesn't know that yet. I've convinced him to delay signing until after my birthday, when the trust activates." "Wise," Eleanor commented. "What's your plan then?" I hesitated. "I'm not entirely sure. I want to preserve Romano's, to realize Grandma's vision for the property, but I don't want to destroy my family in the process." "Rosa faced similar challenges," Eleanor said thoughtfully. "Joseph's father, your grandfather, initially resisted many of her ideas for the restaurant. She had to be strategic, persuasive. What would she do in my position? She would protect what matters most, Eleanor replied without hesitation. She would find a way to honor the past while building the future, and she would never, ever undervalue herself or her contributions. Her words resonated deeply. Thank you, Eleanor. I think I know what I need to do. Over the next 2 weeks, I maintained a careful balancing act. I cooperated with Valley's various teams as they prepared for the franchise conversion, offering information when asked, participating in menu development discussions, even reviewing preliminary training materials. Matt gradually relaxed his suspicion, believing I had accepted the inevitable. Meanwhile, I met secretly with Eleanor and her team of experts, architects, contractors, financial advisors, refining Grandma's vision for Romano's Plaza. Updated the business plan, secured preliminary commitments from potential tenants, and prepared all the necessary paperwork for when the trust activated on my birthday. I also began quiet conversations with key staff members, gauging their interest in remaining with a revitalized, expanded Romano's rather than its franchised version. Without exception, they chose my vision over Matt's. The days ticked by, each one bringing me closer to the moment when I could reclaim Grandma's legacy. I felt her presence constantly, guiding me, strengthening me for the confrontation to come. 3 days before my birthday, Matt called a family meeting at Romano's after closing. Mom and Dad sat at Grandma's corner table, looking confused and concerned. Matt stood before them, triumphant. I took a seat quietly, my heart pounding. I wanted to share some exciting news, Matt announced. Valley Restaurant Group has increased their offer for the Romano's franchise rights. They're prepared to pay $5 million upfront, plus 6% royalties on all location revenues. Dad's eyebrows shot up. That's substantial. It's life-changing, Matt corrected. Enough for you and Mom to retire in style. Enough for all of us to benefit significantly. He slid documents across the table. The final agreement, ready for signatures. We sign Monday, after Emma's birthday, as promised. Mom glanced at me, worry creasing her brow. Emma, are you okay with this? Before I could answer, Matt interjected. Emma has a generous consulting contract as culinary director. She'll be fine. Dad studied the contract, impressed despite himself. Valley must really believe in Romano's potential. They do, Matt agreed enthusiastically. They see what I see, a concept with mass appeal, just waiting to be properly scaled. I sat silently, letting Matt have his moment. In 3 days, everything would change. In 3 days, I would reveal what Grandma Rosa had done, what she had prepared for me to carry forward. In 3 days, Romano's true future would begin. I retreated to the kitchen, fuming but determined. The executives from Valley Restaurant Group represented everything Grandma Rosa had fought against: corporate standardization, profit over passion, efficiency over authenticity. They would strip Romano's of its soul, leaving only a hollow shell bearing our family name. How'd it go? Carlos asked quietly as I returned to the line. They want to make 6 carbon copies of Romano's to start, then expand from there, I replied, keeping my voice low. Supposedly it's about growth and untapped potential. Carlos frowned, wiping his hands on his apron. And the food? They'd keep your recipes, right? Simplified versions, easier to execute, more consistent results. I practically spat the words. Translation: frozen, pre-portioned, idiot-proof dishes any minimum wage cook could assemble. Carlos looked horrified. Your grandmother's recipes? Apparently tradition is only valuable when it can be commodified. I glanced through the pass-through window, where Matt was now showing the executives the dining room's architectural features, gesturing enthusiastically toward the hand-painted murals. Let's finish closing. I need to get out of here before... I say something I'll regret. After the kitchen was spotless, I'd always insisted on restaurant-grade cleanliness, another standard that would likely decline under corporate ownership, I slipped out the back door, avoiding Matt and his guests. The cool night air was a relief after the heat and tension of the kitchen. I walked the 3 blocks to my bungalow, my mind racing with contingency plans. At home, I poured a glass of Montepulciano, a small batch vintage from a family winery. Grandma had discovered on her last trip to Italy and settled at my kitchen table. I pulled out the USB drive from the safe deposit box, plugging it into my laptop. Grandma's vision for Romano's Plaza was truly breathtaking. The architectural renderings showed a beautiful transformation of not just our restaurant, but the entire block. The central courtyard with its fountain and outdoor dining spaces. The specialty food shops showcasing local artisans. The cooking school where Romano family techniques could be taught and preserved. The upper floor apartments that would create a true live work community. It wasn't just aesthetically beautiful, it was financially sound. The business plan Grandma had commissioned showed projected revenues, expenses, financing options, and a phased implementation approach. She had thought of everything, right down to potential tenants for the retail spaces and programming for the culinary education center. This was the future Romano's deserved, not as a watered-down chain restaurant, but as the heart of a vibrant culinary community. I scrolled through the financial documents, familiarizing myself with the property holdings. According to the most recent appraisals, the combined parcels were worth approximately $5 million. No wonder Valley Restaurant Group was moving so aggressively. The real estate alone was incredibly valuable. But did Matt know that? Did Dad? The letter from Grandma suggested that they believed Dad had inherited everything when Grandpa died, unaware that Grandma had maintained separate ownership of the real estate through RJ Properties. I picked up my phone and dialed Eleanor Barnes, despite the late hour. She answered on the second ring, sounding remarkably alert. "Emma, I was just thinking about you." "I've been reviewing the files from the safe deposit box," I explained. "Grandma's vision for Romano's Plaza is incredible." "It is," Eleanor agreed. Rosa was always forward-thinking. She saw the potential in that neighborhood long before anyone else did. "I want to make it happen," I said decisively. "But I need to understand exactly what will occur when the trust activates on my birthday. How does it work legally?" Eleanor's voice took on a more professional tone. "At midnight on your 35th birthday, the trust dissolves and all assets transfer directly to you. The primary asset is RJ Properties, which owns the real estate parcels we discussed. You will essentially become your brother's landlord." "And what about the franchise agreement Matt is planning to sign?" "Any agreement he signs regarding the business would remain valid," Eleanor cautioned. "However, it wouldn't bind the real estate. If the agreement includes language about the physical location, that portion would be unenforceable without your consent as the property owner." I considered this. "So I could evict Romano's if I wanted to?" "Technically, yes, once the current lease expires, though I doubt that's what Rosa had in mind." She paused. "The lease between RJ Properties and Romano's restaurant actually expires next month, just after your birthday. Quite convenient timing." I smiled, imagining Grandma Rosa orchestrating all of this years ago. "So I could negotiate new lease terms?" "Absolutely. As the property owner, you could set whatever terms you deem appropriate." Another pause. I should note that Rosa left specific instructions regarding reasonable accommodations for the restaurant. She didn't want to see it destroyed, merely protected. "I don't want to destroy it either," I assured her. "I want to transform it, enhance it, make it what Grandma envisioned." "Then I suggest you prepare for a difficult conversation with your family," Eleanor advised. "These revelations won't be received well by those who believed they held all the cards." After thanking Eleanor for her counsel, I sat with my thoughts, planning my approach. The timing was crucial. If Matt signed the franchise agreement before, learning about the property ownership, the situation would become infinitely more complicated. I needed to reveal the truth at precisely the right moment, after my birthday, but before any contracts were finalized. I slept fitfully that night, dreaming of Grandma Rosa standing in Romano's kitchen, teaching me to trust my instincts when a sauce wasn't quite right. "The recipe is just a guideline, Piccola," she always said. "Your heart knows when it needs something more." The next morning, I arrived at Romano's earlier than usual, seeking the peace of the empty restaurant before the day began. To my surprise, Dad was already there, sitting alone at the bar with a cup of coffee, staring at the old photographs that lined the wall behind the bottles, a visual history of Romano's evolution over 4 decades. "Dad," I said softly, not wanting to startle him. "You're here early." He looked up, his expression unreadable. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd come check on things." I poured myself a coffee and joined him, following his gaze to a particularly beloved photo. Grandma and Grandpa on opening day, 1981, champagne bottle poised to christen the front door. They looked so young, so hopeful. "They built something special," Dad said quietly. "They did," I agreed, watching him carefully. "Something worth preserving." Dad sighed heavily. "The restaurant business has changed, Emma. Independent operations, like ours. They're dinosaurs in today's market." "Matt's been feeding you the Valley Restaurant Group talking points, I see." He frowned. "It's not just talking points. It's reality. The numbers don't lie." "Numbers never tell the whole story," I countered. "Romano's isn't just a business. It's a legacy. It's our family's heart." "Hearts don't pay mortgages," Dad replied, but there was no conviction in his voice. "Sometimes we have to make difficult decisions to secure the future." "Whose future?" I asked pointedly. "Yours? Matt's? What about Romano's future? What about the community that depends on this place? The staff who've been with us for years? The customers who celebrate their most important moments here?" Dad didn't answer immediately, his finger tracing the rim of his coffee cup. "Your grandmother was the visionary," he finally said. "She always saw possibilities where I saw problems. When we hit rough patches, I wanted to cut corners. She insisted on maintaining quality, finding other solutions." He smiled faintly. "She was usually right." "She usually was," I agreed, seizing the opening. "Dad, before you let Matt sign anything with Valley, I'm asking you to wait, just until after my birthday. Give me that time to show you another possibility." He studied me, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "What kind of possibility?" "A future for Romano's that honors its past while embracing change. A future that keeps it in the family, keeps it authentic, but allows it to grow." Dad seemed about to ask more when the back door opened and Matt's voice called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" The moment of connection shattered. Dad straightened, his expression closing. "Just think about what's best for everyone, Emma. Change is inevitable." Matt appeared, surprise registering on his face at seeing us together. "Early. Meeting of the minds? Should I be worried?" His tone was joking, but his eyes were suspicious. "Just catching up," Dad said, standing. "I should get going. Your mother's expecting me for breakfast." After Dad left, Matt turned to me, eyebrows raised. "What was that about?" "Nothing," I lied smoothly. "Dad couldn't sleep. Neither could I." Matt seemed to accept this, his mind already elsewhere. The Valley execs were impressed last night. They're sending over revised contract terms today. Higher upfront payment, better royalty structure. He grinned. "Seems your cooking sealed the deal." "Grandma's recipes, you mean?" I corrected. He waved dismissively. "Whatever. The point is, we're on track for signatures next week. Dad's on board. He didn't seem entirely convinced just now, I observed. Matt's face hardened slightly. Dad understands this is a business decision, not an emotional one. He's given me authority to move forward. I nodded, not trusting myself to respond without revealing too much. Just a few more days, I reminded myself. Just a few more days until I held the upper hand. The rest of the day passed in a flurry of activity. Valley Restaurant Group sent not just revised contract terms, but a small army of consultants, photographers documenting every inch of the restaurant, menu specialists analyzing our offerings, operations experts timing our kitchen processes. I cooperated outwardly while inwardly cataloging everything I would fight to preserve once I had the leverage to do so. By closing time, I was emotionally exhausted, but more determined than ever. As I prepared to leave, Matt caught me at the back door. Valley wants to host a signing ceremony, he announced. Monday afternoon, right here. Press, photographers, the works, good publicity for the launch of the franchise. Monday, the day after my birthday. The timing couldn't be more perfect. Sounds great, I replied, forcing enthusiasm I didn't feel. I'll make sure the place looks its best. Matt seemed surprised by my cooperation. Good. And Emma. I know this hasn't been easy for you, but I truly believe this is the right move for Romano's future, for all our futures. For a moment, I glimpsed the brother I'd grown up with, the one who used to share my dreams rather than dismiss them, the one who once cared about something beyond profit margins and business metrics. I'm sure you believe that, I said softly. Good night, Matt. The next 2 days followed a similar pattern. Valley's teams swarmed through Romano's, measuring, documenting, planning how to replicate and standardize everything that made our restaurant unique. I maintained my facade of reluctant acceptance, while secretly meeting with Eleanor to finalize preparations for what would happen after my birthday. On Friday night, Dad insisted on a family dinner at their house, a rarity since Mom usually preferred dining at Romano's to cooking at home. Matt brought his girlfriend Alexis, a marketing executive I'd met only a handful of times. I came alone, as usual. Mom had prepared a classic Romano family meal, not restaurant dishes, but the simpler home cooking that predated Romano's itself. Recipes passed down from Grandma Rosa's mother and grandmother in the old country. The significance wasn't lost on me. To family, Dad toasted once we were seated, raising his wine glass. And to new beginnings. Matt clinked his glass enthusiastically. The contract revisions are completed. Valley's attorneys have signed off. We're all set for Monday's ceremony. Mom smiled tightly. That's wonderful, dear. Emma's been surprisingly cooperative, Matt continued as if I weren't sitting right there. Valley's team says she's been incredibly helpful with the recipe documentation. I'm glad to hear you two are working together, Mom said, glancing between us with cautious optimism. If only they knew what was coming. Actually, I said, deciding to test the waters. I've been thinking about Romano's future a lot lately, about what Grandma Rosa would have wanted. Matt rolled his eyes. Here we go. No, let her speak, Dad said, surprising me. What do you think Rosa would have wanted, Emma? I chose my words carefully. I think she would have wanted Romano's to evolve while staying true to its roots, to grow without being diluted, to remain a family legacy rather than a corporate asset. The franchise agreement accomplishes that, Matt argued. The Romano name continues. The recipes continue, with updates and improvements, of course, and the legacy expands to new markets. But is it still our legacy if we don't control it? I pressed. If Valley makes all the decisions about menu, decor, operations, if the Romano name is just a brand rather than a family's promise of quality? Dad looked troubled. Mom reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. Emma has a point, Joseph. she said quietly. Rosa was very specific about maintaining control. Remember how she refused those investor offers back in the 90s? Different times, Matt interjected. Different market. Valley is offering us control through the franchise agreement. We'll have approval rights on major changes. Initial approval, I corrected. Then it's their ball game. Alexis, who had been silent until now, joined the conversation. From a marketing perspective, franchising makes perfect sense. The Romano brand has strong regional recognition. With proper positioning, it could dominate the mid-scale Italian dining segment nationwide. I stared at her. The Romano brand isn't a brand. It's our family name. It represents 3 generations of culinary tradition. And that tradition is exactly what makes it marketable, she replied, seemingly oblivious to the emotional weight of the discussion. Authentic family recipes, generational heritage, consumers eat that up. Valley's smart to capitalize on it. The way she reduced our family legacy to marketing points made my blood boil, but I forced myself to remain calm. This wasn't the time for a confrontation. Not yet. Let's table the business talk for tonight, Mom suggested, sensing the tension. This is a family dinner. The conversation shifted to safer topics, but I noticed Dad watching me thoughtfully throughout the meal. As we were finishing dessert, Mom's torta della nonna, another family recipe, he asked abruptly, "If not franchising, what would you do with Romano's, Emma? How would you grow it?" The question caught me off guard. I could feel Matt's suspicious gaze on me as I answered. I'd expand, but differently. Keep the original restaurant as our flagship, then develop complementary businesses around it. A cooking school teaching authentic Italian techniques, a specialty market selling our sauces, pastas, and imported ingredients, maybe a catering operation, or a food truck. Growth that builds on our strengths rather than diluting them. Dad nodded slowly. Interesting approach. Also expensive, Matt cut in. The capital investment would be substantial. Where would that money come from? There are options, I said vaguely. Targeted investors who respect our vision, limited partnerships, phased development to manage cash flow. Valley's offering guaranteed money up front, Matt countered. No risk, no additional investment required. No control either, I pointed out. No autonomy. Control is overrated when you're counting profits, Matt retorted. The familiar stalemate descended, and Mom quickly steered us back to neutral territory. As the evening wound down, Dad pulled me aside while Matt and Alexis were saying goodbye to Mom. "You really believe in this alternative vision, don't you?" he asked quietly. "With all my heart," I replied honestly. Romano's deserves better than becoming just another chain restaurant. Dad studied me, his expression unreadable. "You're very much like your grandmother. She was a fighter too." Is that a compliment or a criticism? A faint smile touched his lips. Both, perhaps. He sighed heavily. "I'll come by the restaurant tomorrow. Show me these ideas of yours in more detail." My heart leapt. "Really?" "I'm not making any promises," he cautioned. "Matt's franchise plan is solid, financially secure. But before we sign anything irreversible, I should understand all the options." "Thank you, Dad." I impulsively hugged him, something I rarely did these days. "Tomorrow morning? Before we open for lunch?" He nodded. 9 o'clock. I drove home with renewed hope. If Dad was willing to consider alternatives, perhaps the revelation about the property ownership wouldn't be such a shock. Perhaps we could find a way forward that didn't fracture the family completely. The next morning, I arrived at Romano's at 8, wanting time to prepare before Dad arrived. I brought my laptop with Grandma's files, ready to share her vision for Romano's Plaza. But 9 o'clock came and went with no sign of Dad. At 9:30, I called his cell phone. No answer. At 10, I called the house and got Mom. "Your father had to go into the restaurant supply store," she explained. Some emergency with Matt. He asked me to tell you he'd need to reschedule. The emergency became clear when Matt showed up at Romano's an hour later with 2 more Valley executives and an implementation team. They commandeered the dining room, spreading out blueprints and sample boards. "What's all this?" I asked, though I already knew. "Valley accelerated the timeline," Matt explained, not meeting my eyes. "They want to start renovations immediately after the signing. We're finalizing the design package today." What happened to waiting until after the signing ceremony on Monday? Matt shrugged. "Business decision. Their CEO is coming to town Sunday instead of Monday. We moved everything up a day to accommodate his schedule." Sunday, my birthday, the day the trust activated. "You're signing tomorrow?" I clarified, my heart racing. "But we agreed to wait until after my birthday." "It is after your birthday," Matt replied impatiently. "Your birthday is tomorrow. The signing is tomorrow evening. What's the problem?" The problem was timing. The trust wouldn't activate until midnight on my birthday. If Matt signed the franchise agreement before then, it would complicate everything. "No problem," I lied, just surprised by the change of plans. I retreated to the kitchen, immediately calling Eleanor. "They moved up the signing," I explained in a hushed voice. "It's happening tomorrow evening instead of Monday." "That complicates matters," Eleanor admitted. "The trust technically activates at 12:01 a.m. on your birthday, but the formal transfer of ownership records won't happen until the banks open Monday morning." "So, legally, where does that leave us if Matt signs tomorrow?" Eleanor thought for a moment. "The franchise agreement itself would still be valid as it pertains to the business, but any provisions regarding the physical location would be unenforceable once your ownership is established. It creates a legal gray area we'd prefer to avoid." "Can we move up the trust activation?" "The trust document is very specific about the timing," Eleanor replied, "but there is a way to delay the signing without revealing your hand." "I'm listening." "The property inspection," she said simply. "As your grandmother's attorney, I can insist on a formal property inspection before any agreements affecting the building are signed. It's a standard legal precaution, and I can cite concerns about potential structural issues that might affect Valley's renovations. Would that work? It would create a perfectly reasonable delay of at least 48 hours. By that time, your ownership will be clearly established." I exhaled with relief. "Make it happen." "Consider it done," Eleanor assured me. "I'll contact your brother's attorney immediately." I returned to the dining room, where Matt and the Valley team were deep in discussion about removing the hand-carved bar to create more seating. "Matt, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" He frowned, but followed me to the small office. "What is it? I'm in the middle of something important." "I just got a call from Eleanor Barnes," I said, the partial truth coming easily. "She's an attorney who worked with Grandma Rosa. She says there needs to be a property inspection before you can sign any agreements affecting the building." Matt's frown deepened. "What? Why?" "Something about potential structural issues that might impact Valley's renovation plans. She's contacting Dad's attorney now, but I thought you should know." "This is ridiculous," Matt fumed. "The building was inspected when Dad inherited it from Grandpa. There are no structural issues." I shrugged innocently. "I'm just passing along the message. Apparently, it's standard legal procedure." "This feels like a delay tactic," Matt said suspiciously. "Are you behind this? How would I arrange something like that?" I asked, widening my eyes. "I don't even know this attorney. She knew Grandma, not me." Matt studied me, still suspicious but unable to find a clear reason to object. "Fine. I'll call Dad's attorney and sort this out. But the signing is happening this weekend, Emma, one way or another." "Of course," I agreed mildly. "I just thought you should know about the potential complication." Matt stormed out, already pulling out his phone. I allowed myself a small smile. Eleanor's intervention would buy me the time I needed. By Monday morning, I would control the property, and the dynamic would shift dramatically. The rest of Saturday passed in a tense holding pattern. Matt spent hours on the phone with attorneys and Valley executives, trying to circumvent the inspection requirement. Dad showed up briefly, looking harried and confused about the sudden legal complication. "Eleanor Barnes," he repeated when Matt mentioned the name. "Rosa's attorney? What does she have to do with this?" "Apparently she has concerns about the building's structural integrity," Matt explained impatiently. "It's nonsense, but Valley's attorneys are being cautious now. They want to postpone the signing until the inspection is complete." Dad looked troubled. Rosa always spoke highly of Eleanor. She wouldn't raise concerns without reason. "It's a delay tactic," Matt insisted. "Someone's trying to derail this. Deal?" Dad's eyes flicked to me briefly. "Let's get the inspection done quickly then. If there are no issues, we can proceed." "The earliest they can do it is Monday morning," Matt complained. "Valley's CEO is only in town until Monday afternoon." "Then we'll make it work," Dad said firmly. "These things have to be done properly, Matt." I busied myself with dinner preparations, hiding my relief. Eleanor had succeeded in buying me the crucial time I needed. Now I just had to make it through. Sunday, my birthday, without arousing further suspicion. That evening, after closing, I sat alone in Romano's darkened dining room. In less than 24 hours, I would turn 35. In less than 24 hours, I would inherit control of the property that held our family restaurant, and so, much more. In less than 24 hours, everything would change. I poured myself a small glass of Grandpa's favorite grappa and raised it to the wall of family photos. "I hope I'm doing what you would want, Grandma," I whispered. "I hope I'm worthy of your trust." As if in answer, the single light we always kept burning in the kitchen seemed to glow a little brighter, casting a warm golden halo through the swinging doors. I smiled, feeling Grandma Rosa's presence all around me. This place was alive with memories, with history, with love. It deserved to be protected, preserved, enhanced, not commodified and replicated. Tomorrow, I would ensure that legacy continued, no matter what it cost me personally. Tomorrow, I would claim my birthright and reveal Grandma Rosa's final brilliant gift. Tomorrow, Romano's true future would begin. "Valley wants to host a signing ceremony," Matt announced, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "Monday afternoon here at Romano's. They're flying in their CEO, bringing a photographer from Restaurant Business Monthly. It's going to be a big deal." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral despite the relief flooding through me. Monday afternoon, after my birthday, after the trust activated, perfect timing. "Sounds impressive," I managed. "It is," Matt continued, oblivious to my inner thoughts. "This is just the beginning, Emma. Valley thinks Romano's could be their premium Italian concept. 20 locations within 5 years. My face on the franchise brochures." He grinned. "Dad's legacy secured." "Dad's legacy," I repeated softly. "Not Grandma's?" Matt's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Grandma was amazing, of course, the heart and soul of this place. But times change, Em. She would have understood that. I bit my tongue. Now wasn't the time to argue about what Grandma Rosa would have wanted. In less than 48 hours, I wouldn't need to argue at all. "I should get home," I said. "It's been a long day." Matt nodded, his attention already shifting back to the contract papers in his hand. "Valley's sending their design team tomorrow to take final measurements. Try to be accommodating, okay? This is happening, whether you like it or not." I left without responding, walking home through the quiet streets of Oakwood. Tomorrow was my birthday, a day that would change everything, though not in the way my family expected. That night, I could barely sleep, my mind racing with plans and preparations. By morning, I was exhausted but wired, fueled by anticipation and 3 cups of espresso. When I arrived at Romano's, Valley's design team was already there, measuring the dining room and discussing where to place their standardized decor elements. "We'll need to remove this bar," said one, pointing to the hand-carved masterpiece Grandpa Joe had commissioned from a local artisan. "The franchise model uses a modular service station, more efficient." "And these murals have to go," added another, gesturing toward the beautiful hand-painted scenes of the Italian countryside. "Corporate aesthetics call for standardized wall treatments." I moved through the kitchen, focusing on prep work while silently cataloging every detail they planned to destroy. The wood-fired oven Grandpa had built brick by brick. The custom pasta station Grandma had designed for optimal workflow. The herb garden visible through the kitchen window, where I grew the fresh rosemary, basil, and thyme that flavored our signature dishes. None of it would survive Valley's standardization. At noon, Matt arrived with more Valley executives, including their head chef, a corporate food developer who'd never worked a busy line in his life. They sat at Grandma's corner table, speaking loudly about streamlining the menu and automated sauce preparation. I retreated to the walk-in refrigerator, needing a moment alone to maintain my composure. Just a few more hours, I reminded myself. At midnight, everything would change. The lunch service passed in a blur. I cooked on autopilot, producing Grandma's recipes one last time before Valley's improvements would render them unrecognizable. Each dish felt like a small act of defiance, a tribute to the Romano legacy. In the afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived. Eleanor Barnes, dressed immaculately in a tailored suit, her silver bob gleaming under Romano's lights. "I have a meeting with Matthew Romano," she informed the hostess, who directed her to my office where Matt had set up camp. I busied myself with inventory, ears straining to catch their conversation. Eleanor had promised to arrange for the property inspection to delay the signing if necessary, but with the ceremony now scheduled for Monday, after my birthday, that contingency was no longer needed. 20 minutes later, Eleanor emerged from the office, followed by a visibly irritated Matt. "Emma," she called, spotting me near the kitchen. "How lovely to see you again." Matt's eyes narrowed. "You two know each other?" "We've met," I replied vaguely. "Through Grandma Rosa. Ms. Romano and I have some matters to discuss regarding her grandmother's estate," Eleanor explained smoothly. "Perhaps we could step outside for a moment?" Matt frowned suspiciously. "What estate matters? Everything passed to Dad when Grandma died." "Not everything," Eleanor said cryptically. "This doesn't concern the restaurant operations, Mr. Romano. It's a private matter." Before Matt could object further, I led Eleanor to the small patio behind the restaurant, where we sometimes held staff meals during warm weather. "He's suspicious," I murmured once we were alone. "Of course he is," Eleanor replied calmly. "Men like your brother always sense when their control is threatened, even if they don't know why." She opened her leather portfolio. "I thought you should have these documents before midnight. The formal transfer will register with the county on Monday, but these give you immediate legal standing." She handed me a folder containing trust dissolution papers, property deeds, and formal notices regarding the expiration of Romano's current lease. "Once these take effect at midnight, you'll have complete authority over the properties," she explained. "Your brother may own the restaurant business, but you'll control its physical home." I leafed through the documents, the reality of what was about to happen finally sinking in. "This will change everything." "That's rather the point," Eleanor observed with a small smile. "Rosa wanted you to have options. Real options, not just the scraps your father and brother deemed appropriate." As Eleanor departed, Matt intercepted her at the front door. "What was that about?" he demanded, walking back to where I stood. What estate matters was she talking about? "Nothing that affects your franchise deal," I assured him. It wasn't technically a lie. The property, ownership would affect it, but not until after all the documents were signed. Just some personal items Grandma left me. Matt seemed unconvinced but let it go, too preoccupied with last-minute details for Monday's ceremony. Valley's sending over the press release draft tonight. They want to announce the deal first thing. Tuesday morning, right after the signing. Sounds like they have everything planned, I commented. That's how successful businesses operate, Emma. With plans, strategies, timelines. He shook his head. Not sentiment and tradition. I let him have the last word, knowing the tables would soon turn. The rest of the day passed in tense anticipation. When we closed that evening, the staff surprised me with a small birthday celebration. A cake Carlos had secretly baked, candles flickering in the darkened kitchen. To Chef Emma, he toasted, the entire team raising glasses. The heart of Romano's. I fought back tears, touched by their loyalty. Thank you all, for everything. We heard about the franchise deal, Maria, our longest-serving waitress, said hesitantly. Is it true? Will everything change? All eyes turned to me, waiting for reassurance I couldn't honestly give. At least, not yet. Change is coming, I acknowledged. But not necessarily the change everyone expects. I raised my glass. Trust me on that. And be here Monday afternoon for the signing ceremony. I promise it will be memorable. They exchanged curious glances, but didn't press further. After they departed, I remained alone in the restaurant, waiting for midnight, the moment I would officially turn 35 and inherit Grandma Rosa's legacy. At 11:50, I poured myself a small glass of Grandpa's cherished grappa and sat at Grandma's corner table. The restaurant was eerily quiet, the dining room illuminated only by the single light we always kept burning in the kitchen and the streetlights, filtering through the windows. I hope I'm doing the right thing, I whispered to Grandma's portrait on the wall. I hope this is what you wanted. At precisely midnight, my phone chimed with a text from Eleanor. Happy birthday, Emma. The trust has dissolved. The properties are now officially yours. Congratulations. I exhaled slowly, feeling a strange blend of exhilaration and trepidation. In that moment, I became not just a chef, not just a Romano, but a property owner controlling assets worth millions. The power dynamic had shifted dramatically, though my family wouldn't know it until Monday. I raised my glass to Grandma's portrait. Grazie, nonna. I won't let you down. Sunday passed in a blur of anticipation. I spent the day at home, avoiding the restaurant and the inevitable family birthday celebrations. I needed space to think, to plan exactly how I would handle the revelations to come. Mom called, inviting me to dinner. It's your birthday, Emma. We should celebrate as a family. I'm not feeling very celebratory, Mom, I replied honestly. Rain check? This is about the restaurant, isn't it? She sighed. Your father thought giving it to Matt was for the best. He has the business degree, the connections. But not the passion, I finished. Not the commitment. People express commitment differently, she said diplomatically. Matt expresses his through strategic thinking. I nearly laughed. Strategic thinking. That's what they were calling his franchise scheme. We'll celebrate another time, I promised. I have plans tonight. Plans that involved reviewing legal documents and preparing for tomorrow's confrontation. Monday dawned bright and clear, a perfect spring day for revelations and reckonings. I dressed carefully in a tailored black pantsuit that projected confidence and authority, rather than my usual chef whites. Today wasn't about cooking. It was about claiming what was rightfully mine. I arrived at Romano's early, finding the staff already busy preparing for the afternoon ceremony. Valley had sent over decorations, branded banners, promotional materials, champagne, and a generic sheet cake with their logo alongside Romano's. Carlos raised an eyebrow at my attire. Special occasion chef? You could say that, I replied, with a smile. Is everything ready for the ceremony? Valley's people have been here since 7, setting up. Your brother's in the office with his girlfriend reviewing his speech. Carlos lowered his voice. They're talking about modernizing the menu and streamlining operations. Maria's already threatening to quit. Tell her to wait, I advised. Things aren't quite what they seem. By noon, Romano's had been transformed into a corporate showcase. Valley banners hung where family photos had been. A podium stood where Grandma's favorite table had always been. Press representatives milled about, sampling canapes prepared by their corporate chef rather than our kitchen. Matt was in his element, working the room, introducing himself as the visionary behind Romano's evolution. Dad watched from the sidelines, his expression a mixture of pride and uncertainty. Mom stood beside him, smiling politely but glancing at the door every few minutes, clearly hoping I would appear. At 1:55, 5 minutes before the scheduled signing, I entered from the kitchen, Eleanor Barnes at my side. A ripple of awareness passed through the room. The Valley executives, recognizing Eleanor from last week's property inspection discussion, exchanged confused glances. Matt spotted us and frowned, excusing himself from a conversation with the Valley CEO. Emma, you're late. We're about to start. He nodded stiffly to Eleanor. Ms. Barnes, I wasn't aware you'd be joining us. I'm here in my professional capacity, Eleanor replied smoothly. As legal representative for the property owner. Matt's brow furrowed. Property owner? Dad owns the building. Eleanor smiled thinly. That's a common misconception in your family, it seems. Before Matt could respond, Valley's CEO approached, extending his hand. Ms. Romano, an honor to meet you. Your brother speaks highly of your culinary talents. Mr. Griffith, I acknowledged. I understand you're planning to transform Romano's into a chain restaurant. We prefer expanding the brand's footprint, he corrected with a practiced smile. Your family's legacy deserves a wider audience. Interesting perspective, I replied. Before you proceed with the signing, there's something everyone should know. Matt stepped forward, attempting to intervene. The ceremony's about to begin, Emma. Whatever this is can wait. No, I said firmly. It can't. I moved to the podium, tapping the microphone to gain everyone's attention. The room quieted, all eyes turning to me. Welcome to Romano's, I began. For those who don't know me, I'm Emma Romano. For 18 years, I've been the executive chef and operational manager of this restaurant, carrying forward the legacy my grandmother Rosa and grandfather Joe established in 1981. The crowd murmured politely, though confusion was evident on many faces. This clearly wasn't the speech they had expected. Today marks a significant moment in Romano's history, I continued, though perhaps not for the reasons you've been told. I gestured to Eleanor, who stepped forward with her portfolio of documents. When my grandfather died 15 years ago, my father inherited the restaurant business, the name, the recipes, the goodwill. But what my father never knew, what my brother never bothered to investigate, was that my grandmother maintained separate ownership of the real estate through a company called RJ Properties. Dad's head snapped up, his eyes widening. Matt's face paled. Yesterday was my 35th birthday, I explained. At midnight, according to the terms of my grandmother's trust, ownership of RJ Properties transferred to me. This includes the restaurant building, the parking lot behind it, and the warehouse next door. Properties with a combined value of approximately $8. $5 million. Shocked murmurs swept through the room. The Valley executives huddled together, whispered urgently. Matt's face had transitioned from pale to flushed with anger. This is ridiculous, he sputtered, stepping toward the podium. Dad inherited everything when Grandma died. Eleanor smoothly interjected, her authoritative tone silencing Matt's protests. Joseph Romano inherited the restaurant business, yes. But Rosa Romano maintained separate ownership of the real estate through RJ Properties, which she placed in trust for Emma upon her 35th birthday. She held up the official documents. These records have been filed with the county registrar this morning, confirming Ms. Emma Romano as the sole owner of these properties. Dad approached slowly, his expression a complex mixture of confusion, disbelief, and dawning comprehension. "Rosa never told me," he said quietly. "All these years, I thought. She wanted to ensure Romanos would be protected," I explained gently. "She knew how you felt about traditional succession, about Matt's business acumen. This was her way of balancing the scales." Griffith from Valley Restaurant Group stepped forward, his corporate smile gone. "What exactly does this mean for our agreement?" "It means," I replied calmly, "that while Matt may be able to sell you the Romano's name and recipes, he cannot guarantee you this location. The current lease expires next month, and as the new property owner, I will not be renewing it under the terms you've negotiated." The room erupted in chaos. Valley executives conferred urgently with their attorneys. Press representatives scribbled notes, sensing a much juicier story than they'd anticipated. Matt looked shell-shocked, his carefully orchestrated moment of triumph crumbling before his eyes. "You can't do this," he finally managed, his voice strained. "You're destroying a multi-million-dollar opportunity out of spite." "Not spite," I corrected. "Vision." Grandma Rosa had a different plan for Romano's future, one that honors its heritage while embracing thoughtful growth. I nodded to Eleanor, who distributed folders containing renderings of Romano's Plaza to key figures in the room. "This is my counter-proposal," I announced. "A redevelopment of the entire property into an Italian culinary destination. The original Romano's restaurant remains our flagship, enhanced rather than standardized. Around it, we create a plaza with specialty food shops, a cooking school, a culinary museum celebrating Oakwood's Italian heritage, and upper-floor apartments." I could see interest dawning on the faces of the press, the local officials who'd come for the ceremony, even some of Valley's team. This development preserves what makes Romano's special while creating new revenue streams and opportunities. It builds on our strengths rather than diluting them. It honors Grandma Rosa's legacy in a way that franchising never could. Dad stepped closer, examining the renderings with growing interest. "Rosa planned this?" "Years ago," I confirmed. "She commissioned architects, financial projections, even identified potential tenants and partners. It's all here." I tapped the folder. "A vision for growth without compromise." Griffith cleared his throat. "This is all very unexpected. Perhaps we should postpone today's signing while we reassess the situation." "A wise decision," Eleanor agreed smoothly. "I believe my client would be open to discussions about Valley's possible role in the Romano's Plaza development, as a partner rather than an owner, under the right terms, of course." As Valley's team retreated to regroup, Matt confronted me, his voice low and angry. "You've been planning this for months, haven't you? Pretending to go along with the franchise deal while plotting behind my back." "I only learned about the trust when Grandma died," I replied honestly. "And I only saw these plans last week. But yes, once I understood what she had arranged, I knew I had to honor her vision rather than yours." "Dad gave me the restaurant," Matt insisted. "He chose me to lead it. And Grandma gave me the property," I countered. "She chose me to protect it. We each have what our respective mentors thought we deserved." Dad joined us, his initial shock giving way to thoughtful consideration. "Your grandmother was always 3 steps ahead," he mused. "I should have guessed she'd have contingency plans." He studied the renderings again. "This actually looks promising, more authentic to what Romano's has always been." Matt stared. at him in disbelief. "You can't be seriously considering this. Valley was offering guaranteed millions." "For what?" I challenged. "For the right to dilute everything that makes Romano's special? To turn Grandma's recipes into mass-produced approximations? To replace our heart and soul with corporate efficiency?" "Business is business," Matt insisted. "Sentiment doesn't pay bills." "Neither does betraying your heritage," I replied. "Romano's has never been just a business. It's our family's legacy, our community's gathering place, our employees' livelihood. Grandma understood that, even if you don't." The debate might have continued, but we were interrupted by Griffith's return. His corporate polish had diminished considerably in the last 30 minutes. "Ms. Romano," he addressed me directly, ignoring Matt entirely. "Valley would like to discuss alternative arrangements given this new information. Perhaps a partnership. Model for the culinary school concept in your development plan." "I'd be happy to discuss possibilities," I agreed, though any arrangement would need to preserve Romano's independence and authenticity. As Griffith and I moved to a quiet corner to continue the conversation, I caught a glimpse of Matt's face, shocked, angry, but most of all bewildered. He had been so certain of his path forward, so convinced of his rightful place at the top of Romano's hierarchy. Now, in the space of 30 minutes, the power dynamic had completely reversed. By day's end, the original franchise agreement was dead. Valley had withdrawn, though they expressed interest in a more limited partnership role in the Romano's Plaza development. The press had departed with a very different story than expected. Not local restaurant joins national chain, but family. Legacy preserved, Romano's plans innovative expansion. As the last visitors left, I found myself alone in the restaurant with Dad and Matt. The silence between us was heavy with unspoken emotions. "You could have told us," Matt finally said, "before all this public drama." "Would you have listened?" I asked. "Would you have abandoned your franchise plans if I had simply told you about the property ownership?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Dad sighed heavily. "Your grandmother obviously trusted you with this responsibility. Emma, she saw something in you that—" He trailed off, perhaps realizing how his words might sound. "That you didn't," I finished for him. "It's okay, Dad. You and Grandma valued different things. She valued preservation, authenticity, community. You valued expansion, modernization, financial security. Neither view is entirely wrong." "So what happens now?" Matt asked, his tone resigned. "Now we figure out how to move forward," I replied. "Romano's Plaza needs multiple components to succeed. There's a place for your business. Skills, Matt, if you want it. Just not at the expense of what makes this place special." He studied me for a long moment. "You really believe in this development plan?" "With all my heart," I answered. "It's the future Romano's deserves. Growth without compromise, evolution without betrayal." Dad picked up the rendering of the completed plaza, studying it carefully. "Rosa would have loved this," he admitted quietly. "It has her fingerprints all over it. Ambitious but grounded. Innovative but respectful of tradition." "That's what I thought too," I agreed. As we stood there, surrounded by the artifacts of Valley's aborted celebration, I felt Grandma Rosa's presence more strongly than ever. The single light in the kitchen seemed to glow with particular warmth, casting its golden halo through the swinging doors. Romano's would continue, though not as any of us had initially envisioned. It would grow and evolve, but on its own terms. Terms defined by quality rather than quantity, by authenticity rather than standardization, by heart rather than corporate strategy. 1 year later, I stood in the center of the newly completed courtyard of Romano's Plaza, watching as Oakwood's mayor cut the ribbon for our grand opening. The development had exceeded even my expectations. A beautiful Italian-inspired piazza surrounded by Romano's restaurant, now expanded and enhanced. Romano's Mercato, selling our sauces, pastas, and imported ingredients. The Culinary Institute of Oakwood, offering classes in traditional techniques, and several specialty food shops run by local artisans. Dad stood beside me, having embraced the new vision once he understood its potential. Matt had found his niche too, managing the business side of the plaza's operations while respecting my continued leadership of the restaurant itself. Our relationship remained complex but had evolved into a functional partnership built on mutual respect. As visitors flooded into the plaza, exclaiming over its beauty and authenticity, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Turning, I found Mrs. Abernathy, now using a cane but still spry at 87. "Rosa would be proud," she said simply. "This is exactly what she would have wanted." I nodded, emotion tightening my throat. "She planned it all, you know, right down to the fountain design." Mrs. Abernathy smiled knowingly. "Romano women always play the long game, dear. You proved that." As she moved away to explore the new plaza, I looked up at the sign above the restaurant entrance, still simply Romano's, the same hand-painted lettering Grandpa Joe had commissioned 40 years ago. Beneath it, we'd added a small plaque. Founded 1981 by Rosa and Joseph Romano, a family legacy continued. That legacy would now extend far beyond what any of us had initially imagined, not as a franchise replicated across the country, but as a unique destination that celebrated our heritage while embracing the future. A place where traditions were honored, recipes were preserved, and community was cultivated. Grandma Rosa had known all along what Romano's could become. She had protected it the only way she knew how, by placing its future in the hands of someone who truly understood its heart and soul. As I walked through the crowded plaza, greeting customers old and new, I silently thanked her for her foresight, her courage, and most of all, her trust in me. Romano's wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was a legacy reborn, a promise kept, a future secured, just as Grandma had always intended. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.